We have lots of different wordings and versions of them. And even today, I was at the last minute looking up what possibly other churches have kind of phrased this principle 3 as. So again, it's all over the place. So these are principles that you can make your own, then, is kind of the message of that. Find wordings that fit you. I have some printed copies of some wordings that we use here on our website, and you certainly can find others that suit you. You could even write your own embellishments of them so that they can become more personal. But basically, the first one is so succinctly put as God is. Remember, we have the one power, the one presence in the universe and in my life. God is. We talked about the nature of God, an unconditional love that is in the universe that we can be aligned with, and that there is no other enduring power, some of the different websites will say, which is true. We don't have to think in terms of some big warring factions going on in the universe that we're trying to please or work for one or the other at any given point. God simply is that one power and that one presence defining us. And then the second one is I am. The fact that we are those creations of God, that we are aligned with that one power and that one presence, that our very nature is of that same goodness and that same love and that same joy. And the scriptures talk about thinking on those things, and it has a whole list of that. We have some of that in our mission statement as well. The idea of peace and unconditional love and hope and all of those good things that you ever can imagine being is what God is. You are as well. You are that. God is and I am. And this third one now is I think. And we'll talk a little bit more about how I think we need to also expand that a little bit. But these are the 5 principles in essence. And this 5th principle says we are co-creators with God, creating reality through our thoughts. And our thoughts are our creative power. You may have heard about this being talked about as the law of mind action. Those of you who are more steeped in unity teachings, this law of mind action comes up. That what is in your mind, basically in your thoughts, comes out in actions and in your life. You may have also heard of the film The Secret or the law of attraction. This is part of the law of mind action, although unity does not separate and create another principle for law of attraction. They kind of put it right under this law of mind action, or unity principle number 3. So you're a co-creator with God. And, really, after you looked at the one power and the one presence of God in unity principle number 1, and you looked at the fact that you are in that image of God, this just falls right into unity principle number 3, that we are co-creators because of our nature, because of the nature of God. And why not? Because we know from last week, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? Doesn't fall at all, actually. So the nature of God and the nature of our being in that image of God leads to this principle number 3, where indeed we are co-creators. So I'll start out my talk here today with a little bit of a warning. We've oftentimes in Unity actually called it spiritual malpractice. This idea of the 3rd principle is complicated. It has a lot of different layers to it. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that it's not just some kind of magical wishful thinking. I think that sometimes the movie The Secret certainly gave that impression that all I have to do is sit in my living room and go boom, 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 and the next thing you know, there's a Ferrari in my garage. That it's just like some kind of, or every single thought that I have is going to manifest. So if I think of a big blue dragon, there it's going to be. This isn't a magical process. It's not just a secret either. as we'll discover, it is certainly part of the fabric of many of the major religions' teachings, and it's certainly the fabric of unity teachings. The caveat also with this principle is that it's not a place where we judge, where we say, well, look in my life and this is what's happening, and so I'm going to judge myself harshly, or I'm going to look at your life and I'm going to say, well, I know what they've been, thinking about, and so I'm going to judge them and use it as a place of judgment. That's not what this principle's intent is at all. It is, if anything, it is a principle about awakening. It's a principle about waking up. Yes, the stuff that is in our life, somehow we are dealing with, we are in that energy. We can make a choice. We can stay in the energy and make of negativity, and we can make that our focus, and we indeed will create from that energy and feed off of it if it is negative and go in that direction. The idea with this principle certainly is that these things that happen in our life, the things that are outcroppings of our life, because of us being in this great universe of creation and this energy field, and we have those choices in it, we have to use that wisely and allow, though, forgiveness and allow ourselves understanding in a deeper sense. So when we see something negative in our life, don't be quick to judge yourself or others because that's in your life as a negative, but use it as a tool. Use it as a place where you can wake up. Perhaps you have been a negative Nelly about a particular circumstance, and you have created for yourself an atmosphere of defeatism or judgment or any number of things, and that is where you're living. And then everywhere you look, that is what you're seeing. So this is a powerful notion to think in terms of our thoughts become things. Great teacher Mike Dooley has that as a whole premise of his whole career, that thoughts become things. So it's not a new thing. We use the term new thought, ancient wisdom. So even the Buddha at one point said, all that we are is a result of what we have thought. If man speaks with a pure thought, happiness will follow him like a shadow that never leaves him. There's a Greek philosopher from the 1st century that said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. People are not disturbed by things, but the view that they take of them. In other words, while we may think that what happens on the outside is causing our inner experience, the opposite actually is true. We live from the inside out. So we create our life experiences through our thinking. So some just will say very simply to you, well, then just change the way you're thinking. Get rid of the stinking thinking, right? And that's it. And there's so many people that have spent so much of their teachings in and around this. David Hawkins talks a lot about the energy fields that we create. So that's the question. What energy field do we want to create? In Genesis, of course, the Bible begins with the idea of God saying and bringing the creation into existence. The Gospel of John says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We could talk a lot and go into a whole series of lectures about this idea of our words revealing what we do think. So watching our words and reframing things, that what we breathe into the ethers, if you would, is matter, because what we're saying is what we're thinking, probably what we're feeling. And as we continue to do those kinds of things, it's like the movie The Secret will say, your wish is my desire. So you get into some of that for sure. It's like someone, as I was preparing, talked about how their holidays and everything are not desirable for them to go visit as a Unity minister, because inevitably the conversation will turn to a phrase that's repeated over and over in their family, which is, with the luck of our family, go figure. And their whole family, except this one lone Unity minister, in that reality, that's what's going to be said. It's going to be said at any holiday, any dinner table, anything. Well, everything that happens, someone loses a job, or their income goes down, or they get, a sniffle, it doesn't matter. That is always the phrase, well, with the luck of our family, go figure. And it's like, well, guess what? That's all they're seeing all the time, is that negative stuff. So it's powerful. Of course, Romans says, be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So it's our mind that changes. It's our perspective that changes. It's not necessarily our circumstances that we find ourselves in that are that perfect thing that we perceive it to be. But our mind can make even the most crazy circumstances into a different perspective, a different twist on it. That's what this principle has to do with. Emmett Fox, again, has great teachings on this idea of what he calls the mental equivalent. He says that if you want something to be outpictured in your life, then you have to create it here first. You have to use the power of your mind and tie that into that presence of God, that power of God, that fact that you are the image of God, and that you have this power, and that creation that you make and it goes into all of the teachings on visioning and how we do affirmative prayer, you'll find out next week. All of these teachings are tied together. So we practice the presence of God by seeing God everywhere and in all things and in all people, despite appearances to the contrary. As we look about the world with the eyes of the flesh, or the eyes of the ego, if you would, with the eyes of the illusion, we see the inharmony, the fear, the difficulties. But as Jesus taught, judge not according to appearance, but judge with a righteous judgment. So that when we see this appearance of what we sometimes want to label as evil, we need to look at the truth that lies behind it. As soon as we see the truth of who we really are, the truth of who God really is, then we look at the circumstances in our life and we can see God there too. We can see it through spiritual eyes. And then the appearance of it seems to change. This is what Emmett Fox was talking about as the mental equivalent. That we create our perceptions. And we've done some teachings in and around that as well here when we talked about the things that we embed in our subconscious mind. All of the things that we have been taught, and how we do self-analysis and we do a spiritual search of what is being pictured from our minds and our hearts. Because we need to be focusing on that inside-out reality. And then that means the responsibility of looking at what is in our inside. What are our perceptions? What are these long-held beliefs? What are all of these thoughts and feelings that I have that are being put out there in this world of energy? One of the ministers I looked at that was trying to explain this idea was talking about finding his keys one time when the lights had gone out in his house. Actually, the whole side of his street, the lights were completely out. And he thought, well, I'm just going to go somewhere. I'm just going to get in the car, go get a cup of coffee or something until the lights come back on. And as he was doing so, his car key fell off of his key ring onto the dark floor in his house. And he could hear it. It hit and it bounced. We've all been there. It's like, now where is it? Pitch black house. And so he thought, well, I'm going to look for it. And he fumbled around, he got down on the floor, and he was feeling for it. And he was like, I can't find it. I just can't find this key. And then he saw the light across the hall. Across the street. Those people had light. There was a street light right out in front of his neighbor's house across the street. So he thought, I know what I'll do. I'll look for my key in the light. So he went across the street, and he got down on the ground there by the curb, and all under the light, he was looking and looking and looking. And his neighbor was like, what are you doing? So I'm trying to find my key. So the neighbor just was so kind, he started pitching in. He was like, well, I don't see it. I'm looking with you. Can't find the key. Where exactly were you when that key dropped? That'll help us. I said, well, I was in my house. Across the street. I mean, how ludicrous. It's an inside job. It's an inside job. Why are we looking outside? Okay? So remember that key. When you start looking at what it is all around you, instead of where is it within you that your creative power is. Henry Ford, of course, is noted for saying, if you think you can, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right. So it's all of these kinds of teachings that we've had about our thoughts having power. And we know thousands and thousands of thoughts come and go at any given turn throughout our day. And we have some thoughts that we cling to. We know those thoughts because those are the thoughts right before we go to bed. We can't get rid of that thought. There's that thought over and over again. The thing is that these thoughts, as they're formulating, are becoming something more than we ever would have wanted them to. We hold on to these thoughts, and we carry them as we move through life. And they become then proof for us. You know, we think this thought, and then we are definitely conclusion-forming, evidence-gathering, meaning-making machines. So we get these thoughts, and it's hard to ever determine did the thought come first or the evidence, but regardless, our brains like to make conclusions from different thoughts. So we form a conclusion, and then our brain gets predisposed to gather evidence that supports it. So we hold a situation then as proof that we really are unworthy, that we really do have lack, that we really do have, a life that is just horrible, that our health is just deteriorating more and more as days go on. We have those thoughts, and we look for evidence. So any little thing that happens, we say, well, there it is. There's the proof for it. And we embed these things deeper and deeper in our subconscious. We all know that we have, experienced different things throughout our life with things that other people have said to us, perhaps, and, maybe old friends and teachers and parents and all of that. And we have taken those things again, and we've worked on it. We've worked on it. And we've tried to find evidence for it. Evidence that, you can't learn a new thing, or evidence that, whatever premise you start with, you look for those beliefs. And this is where this third principle comes to be, that co-creating with God makes new pathways in the brain. It can reframe some of those old thoughts. It is like what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about in his book, How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One. And that's what we need to do. That's what we're called upon to do, is to look at those places where we've embedded such thoughts, or to realize that this current thought that we're having is not what we want to have someone be able to wave a magic wand about. I don't know how I'm going to make that bill. And I don't know how I'm going to make that bill. I don't know how I'm going to make that bill. I don't know how I'm going to make that bill. I don't have the money. 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 Your wish is my command. How much do you want to embed that? Right? What can you do differently? And this is where I kind of want to veer from what I saw in so many of the unity wordings of this principle, because it doesn't reinforce all of the many, many teachings that are out there, the ancient teachings as well as even current teachings. The principle says that we are co-creators because of our thoughts. But I would like to propose to you that we're co-creators not just because of our thoughts, but because of our feelings. And actually focusing on our feelings might even be an easier way to master this principle. What I've noticed in all of the teachings of everyone along this line, like Wayne Dyer or Neville Goddard, Esther Hicks, if you know those teachers, they don't focus so much on the thoughts, because we know it's near impossible to control your thoughts. Mm-hmm. There's thousands and thousands of them coming at you. But I do know that we can pay attention a little bit better if we focus on the feeling or the emotion that we have around those thoughts. Esther Hicks, especially in those teachings, talk about how that if you feel that, if you would, that disturbance in the force, and we know that in the Surrender Experiment and Untethered Soul talks about this as well, that when you are feeling differently about a circumstance that makes you, with your intuition even, feel negatively, do you want to feed into that with more thoughts and more of that feeling? Or do you want to turn from that and go to that happy place, that place where you really know that you can be fulfilled and happy and at peace and all of those things that are in harmony with your God self? And that Esther Hicks talks about this, that when you feel like you are out of alignment, when you feel like it's just something's just not right, I'm anxious about this, I have fear around this, then you are not in alignment with your God self. And that's the signal. That's the signal that you need to move into the direction where you can have clarity, where you can have peace, where you can have harmony. It's nothing more than the middle way that the Buddhists taught. That you take the path of peace. That even when you have decisions to make, and you can just feel your way through that. Because Wayne Dyer talks about that which offends you weakens you. And being offended creates a destructive energy that offended you in the first place. That you need to transcend your ego and stay in peace. And the way you look at those things, or when he says, when you change the way you look at these things, the things you look at will change. So this idea of feeling, that if you work your way through your day, and when something feels off, something's made you angry, something's made you upset, disappointed, something's made you sad, that's where it can be a signal to work with that feeling, because there's a thought behind that feeling. And that is a key to understanding that the thoughts and feelings that are held in mind repeat after their kind. I think the emphasis we have to focus on with this principle is, what are we holding? The idea of what are you willing to go that extra mile and hold on to so tightly without releasing, that you really are saying to the universe, this is what I truly want. I want this upset, and I want this fear, and I want this yuckiness, I want this conflict. Or are you willing to release? So again, this principle coupled with this idea of releasing is very important. Thoughts held in mind reproduce after their kind, and feelings after their kind. Because you notice how you just even talk about it, how you spiral down. You go from one feeling to another, and you allow like one little situation to spiral down. It's like you get cut off in traffic, and then you go to work, And now you make a case, you have a premise, you make a case that the boss is out to get you, so you look for evidence for that, and then you move through, and it's like, well, they never liked me anyway, I can tell by the way they acted in the break room, and you just start creating all your evidence, and you're feeling this way, and feeling that way, and feeling another way. Those are signals that you're out of alignment. It's like, how would Jesus feel? You know? How would you feel if you were truly in your God self at that moment? So shifting it with paying attention to those emotions. Disappointment is communication from your inner being, letting you know that which you have focused upon is not what you want. If you are sensitive to the way you are feeling, then disappointment itself will let you know that what you're thinking about is not what you want to experience. The more embedded the feeling, the more embedded the thought. Everything we have within us, all our perspective, these are all different lenses of what we have learned, and what we have learned sometimes comes from a false premise. So if we have a false premise in our perspective, something we've learned from parents, teachers, siblings, other churches, partners, life circumstances, all these events, if you've learned something that you don't want to have, and you keep looking for evidence for it that keeps making you feel that bad way, there's a Karen Drucker song I should play for you sometime that just says, "Stop it." Right? Just stop that. I mean, just that's what happens. And if we're self-aware, and if we're our God self, we could start paying attention to those ways that we are feeling. And then when something we don't want has happened, we just allow it to go through us and past us. When those negative emotions come and those negative thoughts, we don't hold them in mind. We don't just do what it seems as if we have a tendency to do, is just to take them and put them in a nice little place and put a bow around them and just carry them around on our sleeve. It's like, and just wait for more evidence to feed into this negative emotion and thought that we have. Again, the antidote to this is principles 1 and principles 2. If you live in that reality, then this other stuff just can be released more frequently. It is the work that we do to recognize these places in our life where it's like, wait a minute, where'd that come from? And that's not what I want. What I want is this. So that's where that forgiveness idea comes about. That's why, we talk about ego and different things along this line. These are our teachers, So when you have that negative feeling and that negative thought, and you're starting to make evidence for that reality you don't want, good. That's your clarity point. That's where you can say, hey, I got it now. Yeah, this is not what I want, and I'm not going to hold on to this baby. I'm releasing this, and I'm going to focus on my God self. And that's why this principle becomes so powerful, because we can focus on what we want to focus on. We can create a reality that we want to create. Life can be an adventure. We're in that field of possibility. We have unlimited possible realities. We can look at the times when circumstances of our life are hard, but they are gifts. Our energy can work with this idea of the fact that we haven't fallen far from the truth. And we can focus on the fact that we are that tuning fork of energy, and that we don't have to just be like, I used to actually, when I worked in the cubicle world before I got an office with actual walls on a door, when I was in the cubicle world, I actually had a stuffed squirrel up on my cubicle, because that's what it was like working in cubicle world, where at any moment you're hearing someone else's conversation, and it was just like squirrel, 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 and I don't do well with that. Okay? I mean, I have enough of that going on myself without having all this other media around me, basically, right? So we're a tuning fork. So what is it that we want to focus on? What is it that we want to pick up on? We're a magnet, you know. If we're, I think this is in Ellen Davenport's book. You'll read it this week and tell me. But it says that if we're humming a happy tune is what's reflected. If we're cranky, that's the tune that the universe is going to hum along to. Right? So, what do we want to hum? I guess. If you're vibrating with joy, you'll experience more joy. If you're vibrating with misery, that's where you're going to experience more misery. Your vibration is reinforced. That's what the law of attraction actually says. The law of mind action. The law of cause-effect. All of these things. We're trying to show up differently on the outside. And we need to keep in mind that this is an inside job. Someone said that this law, this principle, is as simple as ABC. That we ask, the A, ask with clarity. Know clearly what it is that you want. What is it that you want to vibrate? What is it of your God self you want to show up as? This is the place where God shows up. We sing that song. What is it that we want to do in those ways to show up like God would? So asking with that kind of clarity. And B, believing. Believing as if. Believing as you are indeed embedded in principles 1 and 2. You're worthy, you have unconditional love, you are faith, you are hope, you are courage, you are all of those things. Believing from those places. And then C, collect. Allowing things to be, bringing them forth in your life, staying in that flow, asking, believing, and collecting. ABC. I thought that was a good way of putting it. So, what can we see differently? What can we do with anything that comes in our life? Any thoughts that come, any feelings that come? What can we do with those things? Are we seeing them as obstacles or as opportunities? There's a story of Maddie, Mary, and Molly, and a little duck that I'm going to call Dottie. I named her Dottie. So these three ladies, Vicki reminded me, we saw a movie just like this recently, but these three ladies decided to go on a retreat together, and they've been spread all over the country, even though at one time they were very close because they went to college together. And they decided that they're just going to get together for this girls' weekend at this wonderful little camping site. So Maddie is there, and she's a New York executive from Wall Street. She's always in a designer suit. Her hair and nails look like she just walked out of the most expensive salon at any given time. But since it's this weekend retreat, she thinks, well, I'm going to come out of my cabin, and I'm not going to obviously dress like that. I'm going to just put on my jeans. I'm going to put a ball cap on. I'm not going to be concerned about my hair. I'm just going to go to the cafeteria or whatever, the mess hall, cabin place where you go to eat. And I'm going to go there and I'm going to join my friends. So she goes up there and she realizes as she's coming up the walkway to the place to eat, and there's Dottie the duck just quacking away at her. Just quack, 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 quack. And she goes, I know, it's awful. I just look horrible. My hair's not fixed. You know, I had to scrounge around my cupboard. I didn't even know I had jeans this awful looking. But this is camping, and this is what I'm going to look like, you know, but, you know, I look a mess. So then Mary, she's there at the retreat, and she comes out of her cabin, and she goes up to the place to eat, and she is a frazzled single mother of 3. So when Dottie goes quack, 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 quack at her, she says, please, do not ask another thing of me. I don't want to hear it. I'm tired of doing for anybody and everything, and now here's this duck asking me for something. I'm tired of it. I don't have another inch of energy to give to anybody else. I just want to go in and have my breakfast. So Molly, she comes out of her cabin. Now Molly is from South Austin. She owns a resale shop, and she has a little budding music career where she likes to play her little gigs at coffee shops around with her guitar. And sometimes she even sings at Unity churches. So Molly goes up to the place to eat, and she hears Dottie quack, 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 quack together. And she goes, "Oh, is that a beautiful song you're singing just for me? I just love your song. You're telling me that this is a wonderful day and we're going to have such a wonderful time together as friends. I love you, Dottie, and I know that's what you're saying to me." And she goes in and has her breakfast with the others. So, of course, we all have that quacking duck, right? We always have that quacking duck. There's always somebody saying something. There's always a thought we have that's going on in the back of our mind. It's that car that just is making that noise that you know needs to go into the shop. It's those relatives that you have that you just don't want to take that call because you know what you're going to hear, right? It's that feeling a little bit wrong in your body where you're like, I'm going to have to go to the doctor again. It's all of those things, that quacking duck. But again, which one are we going to be? So the goal, again, would be like our little friend from South Austin, listening to that same duck and realizing that this is a benevolent universe, that this universe has got our back, that there is unconditional love to focus on, and there's joy and there's peace and all of those things. One last story. This comes also from Esther Hicks. This idea of how we are the sculptors of our own world. And that's what this principle has to do with. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried to sculpt anything out of clay. Perhaps even when you were a child, and all you could do is kind of come up with a bowl or a cup that didn't hold water. Or if you've been an expert, you've played with actual clay, like making real things, probably beautiful things. But you as a sculptor know that you could throw that big wad of clay and you could get a little bit ways into the process and you could decide to start all over. You could decide, well, that's not going well, and you could start again if it didn't turn out right. So a sculptor knows that once his or her hands are in the clay, the idea is to mold it with the vision that you have in mind that matches then ultimately the clay that's there on the table. But giving yourself that opportunity to start again. That life is going to happen and we continue to mold our life experience. But we mold it with that vision that we have in mind for what we want it to be. And that vision matches our desires. Many times people talk about God's will, again, as it's something that's out there. But these good feelings that we have, these desires that we have, these places of peace and these places of joy, those places that have you feel happy are the things that you can focus on. And you can understand that your clay, no matter what it looks like right now, is still moldable. So what can we see differently? What can we feel differently in our life? That's what this law is about. Any questions or comments you might have at this point?
Very poignant.
There's so many parts to this because it goes off into all of these areas. You know, it's like, why do we do vision boards? Why do we pray the way we pray? All of it comes around to this principle.
What was the Romans?
12.
It had to do with Romans 12.
Be transformed by the
Yeah,
renewing
being
of your
transformed by the renewing of your mind. actual verse. I just said it. I just said it out of my brain.
She-
Yeah, it's in, yeah, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what that is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. It's Romans.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 12:1, but I'm not certain.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look at
Yeah.
And you know, when you were telling us about the ABC of, ask for what you want,
Yeah.
believing as if it's happened or it's happening,
Mhm.
and collect. How I read that collect is like collecting evidence that it is
Sure.
happening, like reaffirming, yeah,
Right,
see,
exactly.
this is God. Yeah,
Right.
in my life, yeah.
It's a God job.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it too, when we create stress in our lives, or see things as stressful, that to get back into the spiritual and loving self that you are.
Right.
And then to even match the first song that we had, well, the second song, Blessing to the World, is that
Mhm.
we're the
Right.
blessing.
Right.
I was like halfway through the song,
Right.
and I realized, oh, we are the
Right,
blessing to the world.
right,
That's
Right.
really cool.
right. And you move from that, yeah,
Yeah.
right. See, that's just a perspective shift. So then, I mean, so many of these so simple, right? So what happens if the rest of the day, that's how you show up in the world? I'm gonna be a blessing. I'm gonna be a blessing. So how does that change your interactions with everybody? On the road, in the restaurant, at your family gathering, in your home life? I'm gonna be a blessing. I mean, any one of these shifts, and then people were a blessing to me, and you just look for that.
Or even if you just say, I want to listen compassionately today.
Right. And these are the intents, right? Yeah. And these are all the tools we have to create a different reality. Lose our minds and create a new one. Other comments? We have the,
Okay, would you repeat what, disappointment is a sign that what we're thinking is bringing about something we don't want. Did I get that right? Say that again. Disappointment is a sign that our thoughts, that we're holding thoughts
Yes.
in mind.
I thought it was.
yeah, disappointment, well, I don't know what I said, but what I wrote was, disappointment is communication from your inner being, letting you know that which you are focused upon is not what you want.
Not what you're focused upon.
Right.
It's not
So
what you want.
again, these signals, if you allow the signal of the feelings, just play with that a little bit, that the feelings are the signals. Okay. Come on.